Do you struggle with procrastination? You're not alone. So many people struggle with being able to actually get the things done that they want to get done. It is a normal problem, but it doesn't have to be for you. Watch this video because we're going to figure out how to beat procrastination once and for all. We recently had a productivity video. One of our viewers reached out to me and said that one of his biggest struggles with productivity is actually procrastination. And it was interesting because in the productivity video, we talked about these emotional barriers to being productive and getting things done, and one of them was perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't just wanting the end result to be perfect. And in that productivity video, that's what I talked about, is learning what good enough looks like and learning that done is better than perfect and really applying that. That tackles one form of perfectionism. There's actually another issue with perfectionism that we never talk about, which is wanting to do something the perfect way. And this is something I struggle with, if I have to be honest, is wanting to do the thing perfectly, not just wanting a perfect outcome. Let's talk about going to the gym. I want to go to the gym a certain number of times a week. I want to go in the morning. I know that the gym gets super busy at 8:30 a.m. And so to me, there's a perfect time to go to the gym. And if I miss that perfect window, I don't want to go. Another example is if I'm preparing for an important meeting, and that means that I want to make a plan, I want to have 6 hours of uninterrupted time, and if I can't get that 6 hours of uninterrupted time, I'm not doing it. That is in and of itself another form of procrastination, because you've decided, and in this case I've decided, that there's a perfect way to do something, and if I can't do it that perfect way, then I'm going to reschedule it and do it at a different time when I can do it the right way. So what I'm doing with that kind of perfectionism procrastination, where I'm overly fixated on the way that I do it, is I've learned to give myself grace about doing it imperfectly. It doesn't actually matter if I don't go to the gym at the perfect time. It may be more crowded, but I'm still gonna get my workout done. Doing the thing is more important than doing the thing in the perfect way or with the perfect system. So as much as I like my perfect systems, and they're really good, it is still true that I can do the thing even if I can't follow the steps exactly the way I want to follow them, and it's more important that I get my workout in than it is important for me to work out in an empty gym. Does that make sense? And that's true for everything else. I actually see a lot of people holding back from going after their goals or starting things that are really big and important to them in their lives because they're waiting for the perfect circumstances. That doesn't happen. And I see people, frankly, really struggling with it. People in my own life who I care deeply about want to do really big, important things that could change their lives and other people's lives. And what's holding them back is waiting for things to be perfect. And they never will be. You just have to get started. You just have to do the thing. And you just have to make the circumstances as good as they can be for what you're trying to do. The second biggest obstacle that people are struggling with and that is causing them to procrastinate is this myth about motivation. I did ask the person who reached out to me, I'm like, well, okay, if it's not perfectionism in your case, why are you struggling with procrastination? And in his case, he said, no, it's not about perfectionism, Gabby. It's actually, I lack motivation. And I think that this is really important to address as a myth. And the reason I'm saying it's a myth is because motivation isn't what gets you to do things. Motivation is what gets you started on something. But if you're expecting to feel motivated all the time and you're waiting to feel motivated in order to do something that's important to you, you are letting this myth of motivation get in your way. And I'm saying letting because you have the power over this. Motivation feels great, right? So let's use an example. Motivation is what gets people with these New Year's resolutions to go to the gym in January. And then you see the numbers about how many people stop going to the gym by week 3, and then you see this like huge tapering in gym attendance in February, and then by March it's kind of back to the normal regulars, right? Well, it's not that going to the gym is a bad goal. It's that motivation is what gets you started, but motivation isn't what keeps you going. Then when the motivation fades, they don't know what to do. And so they put it off, and then it eventually just never happens, and they let their goals slide by the wayside. What really keeps you going is a combination of discipline and habit. You're not gonna scratch my chair. And so if you're struggling with this kind of procrastination, the first step is to change your mindset and to be like, hey, when I have the motivation, that's awesome. That's when it's easy. But if this is important to me, I need to build other tools and systems so I can continue to do the thing that's important to me. So what you want to do is, while you're motivated, you want to set up your systems so that the new thing becomes a habit. But let me give you a different example. You brush your teeth twice a day, or at least once. You learn that you have to brush your teeth a few times a day. You don't think about it. You're not sitting in bed or sitting there after your shower going, dang, am I motivated to brush my teeth today? No. You don't even ask yourself the question. Everything else that you want to become a habit is the same thing. I don't worry about the motivation to do it. It's just a habit. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to do the dishes. That becomes just part of your routine. And maybe you lay out your gym clothes the night before, making sure that your spouse knows this is your gym time, and so they need to do whatever, it is with the kids or something. And it works. It really does work because you've created a system around it. Now, a lot of people are really interested in motivation right now. And in fact, that is this month's book club book, is Drive by Daniel H. Pink. And so a little bit later, I'm filming this in December, so a little bit later in December, I'll have the book club discussion and book review of this book, Drive, which is all about the science of motivation. And it talks a lot about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and the fact that intrinsic motivation is frankly the most effective kind of motivation when you're trying to motivate yourself and others. So if you're interested in the science of motivation, I absolutely recommend getting that book. The other book I recommend about motivation is actually Ali Abdaal's Feel Good Productivity. I'm going to say this over and over again. That is not a productivity book. That is actually a motivation book. But it's really helpful for you to learn how to choose to do things that are more aligned with your why and sense of purpose and your sense of joy and fun. And so if you have activities that don't feel fun, this is a way to either build other activities into your life that are, or try and find the fun in the activities that you have to do, or just accept that you have to do them. Maybe you're never going to make brushing your teeth fun, but you're still going to do it, and some things in life are just like that. It really just depends on what kinds of things you're struggling with your procrastination. And that is one of the other things that is tied to procrastination, is task aversion. Just that is an unsavory task and I don't want to do it. And in that case, maybe you accept that you don't expect to feel motivated to do it. It's just an unappealing task, right? Like flossing. Flossing is probably a good example for this one. You've accepted that you need to brush your teeth and you do it, but most people still don't actually floss, unfortunately. That's what my dentist tells me, at least. Think of it as like flossing, where you're supposed to do it, but it's an unappealing task, if that makes any sense. This is task aversion. Do you need to do it? Then schedule it. Then build in an extra 5 minutes, so before you brush your teeth, you floss and then you brush your teeth. A lot of task aversion is the kind of stuff that you need to do it, but there's no immediate consequences to not doing it, right? It's not like paying a bill where if you forget to pay your bill, they'll shut off your power. It's not like that. It's a cumulative effect over time. There are no immediate external consequences for not doing it, but you know that it gets worse if you don't do it. So for those activities, my biggest tip is to just schedule them. I set aside time either at the beginning or the end of the week. For you, it might be the middle of the week, but set aside 1 to 2 hours where you just knock out all your life hygiene things. Maybe you need more than 1 to 2 hours, and maybe it's twice a week because maybe you have to do like dry cleaning. I don't know. I don't leave my house. But if you leave your house, do those things at a certain time, and then do the online and calling and appointments, the following up on things in life. Set time aside for that. Just 1 to 2 hours a week should be enough time to take care of all your appointments. But what happens is that you put them off, or you're like, oh, I'll do it when I have time. That is another form of procrastination, honestly, is I'll do it when I have time. We're never going to have time because you don't actually want to do it. So you're not going to make time for it. What I do is on Sunday, I plan out my whole week more or less. And that is when I give structure to my week. There's some repeating activities that are structure in and of themselves, but if this is new to you, then start building this muscle of looking ahead at the week and make sure that you have time set aside. And I highly recommend just setting up a recurring block on your calendar that's the time that you're going to make calls. And unfortunately, it usually does have to be during the workday because a lot of your calls are to places that are open while you're working. So maybe that's setting aside time from 8 to 9 on Friday and 10 to 11 on Monday or Wednesday or whatever your less busy meeting day is. But put the time on your calendar and just accept, great, that's the time when I'm going to make these 5 phone calls. The other thing that people struggle with, and I think that we don't talk about this enough either, is just the toll it takes to have all these things floating out there that you should do and aren't doing. Because there is this invisible cost of procrastination, and that invisible cost is the guilt you feel and the emotional weight you're carrying around for all the stuff you're procrastinating that you don't even think about consciously, but is weighing you down, and it is keeping you from being happy. For me, anything I've left undone on my to-do list, it just pings. So it's just like the email example in the productivity video, where every time you're aware that you need to do something and then you don't deal with it, that's an additional cost to your attention of thinking about it and then deciding not to do it, and then thinking about it and then deciding not to do it, right? And then looking at it and then deciding not to do it. So there's the emotional load and the attention load and the context switching. So my advice is make active decisions. Make active decisions about when you're going to do something, and then that's when you do it. Or even if you pick a day, I'm going to do it Friday, but you don't make time on Friday to do it, then it's going to slip. And then on Friday, you're like, I should do this thing, I should do this thing, I should do this thing, and you keep not doing it. That is a lot of emotional load and attention load, and you're just hurting yourself. And I know you know this. You're like, Gabby, I know procrastination hurts, but I want you to think about it in those terms. The cost of procrastinating is greater than the cost of making time and taking care of the thing you need to take care of. So again, time box it, schedule it, make an active decision. I'm going to carry this theme of making an active decision into the next category of procrastination causes. And this is all the stuff you should be doing, okay? Get ready. So we all have this list of things in our head of things we should be doing. And we accept that we should be doing these things. And then we do some of them and don't do others. But what's not present there is active decision making. And so I'm actually going to challenge you to sit down and think about all of the shoulds that you have in your head and make a decision about whether or not you are going to do those things. Because the word should, even when it's a subconscious should, carries an obligation. And when we feel like we're obligated to do something, that actually makes the thing less attractive and less appealing. We are disconnecting the activity from our why and from our goals and from our purpose, and it is an obligation that we then don't want to do. Now, if you reframe that, make an active decision that you're going to do something, when you make that active decision, re-anchor back into your why and re-anchor back into your purpose and your goals. I'm going to do this because it suits my idea of myself as a healthy person. I'm going to do this. I'm deciding to do this activity because I want to get promoted, and if I do this, I will eventually get promoted. Even if it's a tedious thing. Those are active choices that are tying all of these shoulds back into your why. I'm also going to say, when you take this critical look at your list of shoulds, get rid of some of them. Because if you can't tie them back into your purpose or your why or your goals, why are they on your list? Is that a should that you heard from someone else? Is that just a voice in your head telling you that you need to be doing things that don't actually serve the life that you want to have? You are going to feel so much better when you make an active decision to either do these things or get rid of them. There are tons of things in my life that people have told me I should do. And like I said, I have my own list of things that I think I need to be doing in order to do things correctly. But what has made me so much happier in my life is to open up that box and examine all the things that are in it that have the label should on it, and then make an active decision to keep it or get rid of it if it doesn't serve the life I actually want to have. For example, going to the grocery store in person. While that may be fun and I can discover new things in the grocery store and maybe choose fresher produce, I have decided that is not actually how I want to spend my time and attention. It is exhausting for me to go to the grocery store in person, so I order my groceries and I pick them up for free. And really, isn't that why we're doing all this? Is to build the life that we want to have, not what someone else is telling us we should do? Think about all the obligations obligations you have in your life and decide, are they serving you? Because a lot of times the things you're procrastinating feel like obligations because they are. They're not your choice, they're someone else's. Decide what you want to do with that, because you can actually get some things off your list by taking that critical lens towards all the shoulds and making active decisions about what you're going to do with them. Now let's move on and talk about some other common causes of procrastination. Another kind that I hear a lot and that I've had to coach a few consultants through in my career is actually lack of clarity and fear of the unknown. This actually tends to happen more with some of the bigger things that we procrastinate. We just spent the first part of this video talking about procrastinating things that are like chores and obligations and appointments, kind of the tedious activities. But let's talk about procrastinating the big stuff. We have built it into something really big in our heads. That's where the fear of the unknown comes in. Maybe we're doing it for the first time, or maybe there truly is a lack of clarity around how to do the thing that we need to do or why it needs to be done. In those cases, I say, set aside a little bit of time to do some investigation. Do a little bit of research, do a little bit of planning. What's gonna make that less intimidating is to time box it. Again, time boxing is one of my favorite techniques to tackle a lot of different issues, and especially procrastination. Set aside 10 to 30 minutes to research the thing that you need to do. For example, I work independently as a small business owner, and so sometimes I'm having to time box research. And I say time box it because you don't wanna get stuck in analysis paralysis. You might be afraid of doing that, or you might actually do that. So instead of spending 6 hours watching YouTube videos on something, I'm gonna spend an hour watching YouTube videos on something and get the clarity that I need to get started on this new activity. Now, maybe it's not lack of clarity, maybe it's fear of the unknown, or maybe you've done it multiple times, but you've built it into a bigger thing in your head. And you've seen that meme on TikTok or on Instagram somewhere where people are like, yes, I spent, 20 days procrastinating this thing and sat down and did it in 5 minutes, right? Well, think about that. If it took you 5 minutes or 45 minutes, you probably spent more time worrying about it and not doing it than you did actually doing it. It's really hard to convince yourself of that. We know that, we laugh at the meme, and then we turn around and do it anyway, right? What you need to do is break it down into smaller chunks. So in your head, maybe you've turned it into a whole big thing. But what's the first step? What's the first thing you need to do? Maybe it's the research. Maybe it's sitting down and making a rough draft. Do the best in the time that you have. So maybe I've been like, oh my gosh, it's gonna take me all this time to do it, but I've got 2 hours. Awesome. My goal then is to get as far as I can in 2 hours. Shockingly, I'm usually completely finished in that 2 hours. Break it down into smaller chunks. Don't spend 2 hours breaking it down into smaller chunks. Just really quickly off the top of your head right now, tell me, what's the first thing you need to do? Can you set aside 2 hours and say, I'm gonna see how far I can get on the thing I've been procrastinating? Go do that. Now let's take all these tips we just talked about and pull them into one question. So I've decided of these shoulds, these are the ones I'm keeping. I'm gonna time box them. I've decided I'm gonna get started on this project I've been procrastinating. I'm gonna give it an hour to plan, or I'm gonna say, what can I do in 2 hours? Awesome. This is your next question. When am I gonna do this? Every day, ask yourself, when am I gonna do this? This is your biggest mindset shift, right? So if you know that you have a list of things to do, your biggest mindset shift is now going forward, when am I going to do this? This is one of the ways personally I stay super productive, is I just decide what I'm gonna do and then I ask myself, when am I gonna do it? But it involves being intentional, knowing what your goals are, making active decisions, and then scheduling them. And it keeps you from rethinking it. What you don't want to do is just keep remaking that decision and keep reopening the box. I need to do this, maybe tomorrow. I need to do this, maybe next week. No. Is it next week or is it tomorrow? When is it? And this is one of my other biggest pro tips when it comes to procrastination, is sometimes procrastination isn't actually procrastination. Hear me out. Here's an example. I don't do something super ahead of time. There's some things I do, but I do something when it needs to be done. And so a lot of people think I procrastinate things that I don't actually procrastinate. Or they'll be like, Gabby always does XYZ at the last minute. No, I don't. I do it when it needs to be done. It does not need to be done 2 weeks ahead of time. But that is where you might be tripping yourself up, is something is due in 2 weeks, and the moment you know about it, in your head, the clock starts ticking and you keep thinking, I should do this, but you're putting it off. because you know you don't actually need to do it until later. But you might have this other voice inside of you that's telling you, I need to get started on that. I need to get started on that. That's going to take me 20 hours. I need to get started on it. Is it going to take you 20 hours? Probably not. Does that make sense? And so part of you's already decided, I can do it later. Listen to that part of you is what I'm getting at, and know that this is actually an effective productivity system that many people use formally or informally, which is to say, I'm going to do it when it needs to be done. And if it's due on Friday, then I'm going to do it on Wednesday, or I'm going to do it on Thursday. You actually have to know how long things take you. You have to have a good instinct for that. But maybe you do. And maybe you've been beating yourself up for procrastinating things when in reality, you're just doing them when they need to be done. And you're carrying around all of this load of feeling bad about procrastinating when you're not actually procrastinating. I know, crazy, right? But I'm telling you, not all procrastination is actually procrastination. Sometimes that's just you instinctively knowing, I'm gonna do it later, and that's okay. And then the other thing I'm gonna say, and this goes back to taking stuff off your list, sometimes you're procrastinating because you've decided something just isn't that important. It isn't, because I bet you pay your bills, right? I bet you brush your teeth because you know those things are important, so you've made a decision to make them a habit. I'm just saying that sometimes you're procrastinating things because you actually don't think they're that important. And I'm saying, I'm inviting you to decide if you can take that off your list or not, because that is part of procrastination too, is just deciding, I'm putting this off because it's just not that important to me. Okay, do you need to do it at all? Like, honestly, do you? If you do, then when are you gonna do it, right? But if you don't, feel free to take it off your list. I'm empowering you to make that decision for yourself. Other issue with procrastination is external accountability. So a lot of times we're procrastinating things that we know we need to do. They do serve our goals, but there's no one holding us accountable and there's no immediate consequences. I'm just gonna say accountability and consequences go hand in hand on this one, even though they're not synonymous, but for the purpose of this one, both things are true, which is that you can keep putting it off and there are no immediate consequences to you. And there's no one externally holding you accountable. You're like, where are my intrinsic forces that are making me do it? You don't have the muscle to hold yourself accountable, right? In this case, the things we're procrastinating in this area are things that are good for us, but while there's no immediate accountability and no immediate consequences, there also are no immediate rewards, right? So if you think about things in this category that you might be procrastinating, this is the kind of stuff where I hear people all the time saying, oh, I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to do this. You know, you want to do it, but you know that you're not going to sit down and do it and get the reward for it right away. Just like not doing it has no consequences. For those kinds of activities, I highly recommend having an accountability group of some kind. And maybe that is having a meetup with people where they are invested in the same kind of activity. Another example, going back to the workout examples, might be joining a running club or a running group because you want to be a runner and you're struggling to be consistent with it. Groups help you stay consistent. We are a communal species. Humans love community. Find a community that supports you in it. And again, that community can be tied to the type of thing you're doing, or it could be something like our weekly productivity series that we have on She Makes It Work, where we have a support system for people who are trying to be more productive in their lives. One of the things that you can do when you're struggling with procrastination is that then when you do make small progress, celebrate your progress. So if you've been procrastinating something and you take even one small step that gets you further to doing the thing, whether that's a planning step, research, celebrate that progress, celebrate that win. And if you have this support structure around you, like a community or like our productivity group, then you have people celebrating those wins with you. And so even though you don't get instant gratification and instant, rewards for the thing you're doing, you're getting incremental support and incremental celebrations and incremental rewards with people celebrating along with you. That's really important and really powerful. And that has been, for me, such an effective tool. I have so much support in my life, which I am so grateful for. But I've got tons of people in my corner where every time I do something, my support system is celebrating with me and cheering me on. And one of the reasons I launched the productivity group is I want everybody to have that. I want to be that not just for the people in my life, but for the people that are part of our She Makes It Work community. So those are Sundays at 10 a.m. Central, and I highly suggest just joining. Just join. Be in this community with us of people who are supporting productivity and helping people get unstuck. It's very powerful, it's very rewarding, and it is really fun. And I want to talk about something else really quick, because a lot of people who are struggling with productivity might be dealing with something bigger than what we just talked about. Because sometimes what you're thinking is procrastination, it might be bigger. It might be executive dysfunction. A lot of times executive dysfunction is something that can be associated with ADHD. And it's really important to know that executive dysfunction isn't your fault, and it's not laziness, and it is certainly not a character flaw. No procrastination is a character flaw, but it's certainly not executive dysfunction. And if you're wondering if that's what you're struggling with, a lot of times executive dysfunction shows up as struggling to get started with something, struggling to initiate it, not struggling to keep going. That can be more of procrastination. And if you're struggling with executive dysfunction, just know that's an area where maybe you just need a little bit of extra support. And that extra support could be a support group for executive dysfunction. If this is a newer thought to you that you might have this is something that a coach can help with, a therapist can help with. There's lots of different ways that people can get support with executive dysfunction. And in some cases, if that's what you're struggling with, you might need additional accommodations, whether that's at school or at work. So just really ask yourself, as we've talked through procrastination, did those things resonate with you? Or if those specific things and those tips didn't resonate with you, is there a chance that maybe you're dealing with this other thing that might look like procrastination, which is executive dysfunction? And if so, would you like to get some help with that? If you do, then I would really recommend reaching out and researching executive dysfunction, learning more about it, seeing if that feels like what you might be struggling with, and then looking for a support group for that. If that is what you're struggling with, and if you do take that step, I just want you to know I'm proud of you for taking that step, because we all want to build our dream life, right? And whatever tools or support any of you need to build that dream life for yourself, I'm proud of you for doing it. I'm proud of you for taking that step, whatever that first step is, whether it's one of the tips we just talked about, whether it's getting some support for this kind of dysfunction, or whether it's something else. I just want you to know I'm really proud of you for doing that. So before we wrap up today, I'm going to share my own journey with procrastination. And I know I've been transparent in this video about some of the smaller things I've struggled with, but I haven't shared my full story. It's not long, but it is intense for me. I really struggled with procrastination in my late teens and early 20s. And I believe in my heart that my purpose is to be a creator and a builder and a maker. That is when I'm my most fulfilled and I'm my most happy. And that's also why my struggle with procrastination was so deeply frustrating for me, because the procrastination itself was at odds with my purpose. And I wasn't living my values when I was procrastinating. I wasn't living my purpose. I wasn't expressing my purpose. And that is, when I say frustrating, I don't mean surface frustration like snapping at people, which I also do. I mean like the deep down life frustration, like what am I doing? And so when I first thought about this video, I was like, I'm going to talk about my struggle with procrastination and how the cost of procrastination became too high. And then I realized that while true, wasn't authentic enough, because it wasn't just the cost of not doing things. Because I'm telling you, I used to procrastinate everything. I would have bills pile up. I would have my car breaking down because I didn't get it serviced. I would be late on assignments at work. Like when I say I was bad at procrastinating, well, I guess I was really good at procrastinating. But when I say my procrastination problem was bad, it was life impacting bad. Late fees, bad. Getting in trouble at work, bad. Missing meetings, bad. I mean, I really struggled with this. And nobody in my life would know that. today. I fixed it. I buckled down and fixed it. But the why I fixed it is because at some point I woke up and I was like, I have this vision of who I am and my behavior doesn't match that. That was my wake up call. But I had to allow myself to have that insight and that realization. And that may look different on a different scale. It just may look like, hey, I want to build my dreams and I'm not building them because I'm struggling with procrastination or productivity. For me though, it really was as severe as I am not the person I think I am. I am not the person I want to be. And that is really huge, where you can say, here is my picture of myself. Does my behavior match that? Am I doing the things that make that real? Because you are your behavior, not your intentions. And I had to confront that my behavior wasn't in alignment with who I thought I was as a person and my values. That was my wake up call. And you don't wake up one day and suddenly conquer procrastination or be super good at productivity. That's why I always say I have spent decades building my personal system for productivity and my personal system for addressing procrastination, which is why it was hard for me to agree to make this particular video about procrastination, because it was such a deep change that I had to make. So much so that I've tried to actually put that in my past. But I think that it's important for me to be honest and transparent and authentic and reveal, no, it was bad, really bad. And I'm so glad that's not my life anymore, but it took a lot of work and I had to dig myself out of a hole. That's really what I want to share with you too, is no matter how bad you are with your procrastination issue, yeah, there is hope. And doing these things does help. And I know it does because I did it. I did all these things that we're talking about. I learned to time box. I did not come out of the womb time boxing things. I learned to do that. I learned to break these things down into smaller activities. I learned to reward myself and to set smaller goals and to give myself grace when I failed. I learned all of this the hard way. Just like I always say, I learned it the hard way and I don't want you to have to, but I don't want you to feel bad about wherever you're starting from, because just know I was probably worse. And I know how deeply impactful it can feel to feel like the life I'm living isn't aligned with my goals and my values. And I just want to share with you that you can change it and it does get better. So remember, make active decisions about your shoulds, time box the activities that you genuinely need to be doing, break things down into smaller steps, celebrate your wins, give yourself grace, and build a supportive community around yourself, and know that I'm in your corner. I really am. All of these changes I'm talking about are small, and they all add up to big wins cumulatively. So give yourself time, add one or two, and then build as you go. And if you're interested in learning more about motivation, I highly recommend joining our book club. I'll be scheduling the conversation soon about Drive by Daniel Pink, because I think it is a super fun read about motivation. And if you want the support of our productivity group, which I think is turning into something truly amazing, join our YouTube lives every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central. And you can look now and I'll have the next one scheduled and I'll have the link to it so that you can, I don't know, mark yourself interested, RSVP. I don't actually know how that works, but I'll give you the link for it. And I hope to see you there. I'm Gabby from She Makes It Work. I hope this was helpful and I'll see you in the next video.